Hello, my name is Bailey and welcome to a reading vlog as the title suggests. I've been trying to pointedly this summer replace my doom scrolling and meaningless phone time with reading. I'm already like a pretty consistent reader, but I've been trying to pointedly replace that time where I feel like I'm just aimlessly on my phone with reading. And I've really been trying to do that past few weeks and I feel like I've been successful. I've been reading a lot more and I've been feeling a lot more fulfilled doing that. And so I thought, what better thing to do than talk about the things I'm reading? So that's what we're doing here. Without further ado, let's just kind of get into my like currently reading, which is Survive the Night by Riley Sagar? I don't know. This is the second Riley Sagar book I've picked up. The other one I picked up 3 days ago, which was The Only One Left. I'll go grab it. So yeah, a few days ago, as in like 4 days ago now, I picked up The Only One Left and I read it within 3 days. I absolutely flew through this. It was so fast paced and I just found myself needing to like eat it up. And I'm generally like a very, very slow reader. Let me tell you, like the slowest of slow readers. So the fact that I like read like hundreds of pages in a few days is crazy. Same thing with this one. I started this yesterday and I'm already over 50% through, which is just not like me, but I've been eating up Riley Sagar's writing style. Like I've heard about his books many years ago and I never picked them up myself because I do like mystery thrillers, but I've always read YA ones. So these are the first adult ones I picked up. I'm eating them up. I fucking love them. So yeah, I read this one and I was like, I need more. So I went to my local library and I picked this one up. This is actually the first physical library book I've gotten from the library since I was like 10. I busted out my trusty dusty library card, which I usually just use for Libby. But I busted out and borrowed this book because books are fucking expensive nowadays. I haven't bought a lot of books recently, just because I don't have a lot of space, so I haven't been buying a lot. But I haven't looked at the prices of books in a while, but like hardcover books are astronomically priced. Paperbacks are also astronomically priced, so like I'm getting into this guy. So yeah, this is the first library book I've borrowed in a hot minute. So I'm kind of getting used to the texture. This is a bit of a texture thing for me. I don't know how I feel about like the crinkly plastic, but I can get into it if it's free. So to give you a synopsis of this one, it's following a 20-something-year-old girl named Charlie who is essentially hitchhiking her way home from college, and the man she's hitchhiking with, she comes to discover or suspect that he is the serial killer named the Campus Killer, who, as the name suggests, has killed multiple women on her college campus, including her roommate. And the whole book occurs in one night, as the title suggests, and it basically follows her kind of getting through this interaction or trying to survive this interaction with someone she discovers may have committed these crimes and may be trying to do the same to her. Because of like the structure of this book occurring in one night, it's very, very fast paced, so it's really easy to like rip through this book, and I've been having a really good time with it. In terms of enjoyment comparison, I did enjoy the main character of The Only One Left a lot more than I enjoy Charlie. I don't know if this is a consistent thing with Riley Sagar, but like I think he just likes downtrodden, depressed women as main characters. Because they're both very similar in that way. They're very like melancholy and like self-hating and just feel a lot of guilt inside because of things that have gone on in their lives. So I think that might be Riley Sagar's like bread and butter main character. But something about Kit, who's the main character of The Only One Left, I enjoyed more than Charlie. I think Charlie's maybe just a little bit too self-hating for me. Like I recognize why she is, but it's a little bit too much for me. It gets a little annoying. I don't love all the choices she's making. I feel like she's making a lot of shitty choices in this scenario. Like I feel as though if I was in this scenario, I'd be doing better. Is that a false comparison? Probably, but it's just like reading it, I feel like she's making bad choices, which frustrates me. She's also incredibly unreliable. She has these like hallucinations. She's basically has like semi-psychosis episodes every once in a while, so she's very unreliable. She can't trust her own brain, and this guy is kind of like using that to his advantage to manipulate her and make her distrust her assessments of him. And so it's like can get kind of frustrating to read, which is on purpose, but it gets frustrating to read because you're like, every other chapter we feel like we're making progress and then it'll all be taken away because she'll just start to like believe she's basically made everything up in her mind and she starts trusting him again. It's difficult because she's unreliable, she can't trust herself, and she can't trust this guy, and he's like using that. It's an interesting read, but very fast paced. I am still enjoying it. I'm kind of on a thriller kick. Honestly, after I read this one, I might seek out another Riley Sagar, or I have been really wanting to read The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, so that might be my next read, but we'll see because I placed holds at the library, so we'll see whatever gets to me first. But yeah, this is what we're currently reading, and I'll update you when I make more progress on it. I'm on a night shift, and since there's nobody around, I've been reading, and I just want to check in and say this verbally before we get to the reveal because I have like 70 pages left of my book. But I've just realized with all the twists going on, I want to predict a plot twist, and I want it on the record so I can say I was smart. So spoilers starting right now. I will let you know when I'm done spoiling, but fair warning, I'm gonna be spoiling. I am 3000% convinced that Robbie is the boyfriend. I'm convinced he is the campus killer because we just found out that Josh isn't. So I'm convinced he is because he's the only other character who's relevant, he's the only other character that's present. It has to be him. He had an issue with Maddie as a friend to Charlie, so it makes sense why he would kill her. And he's a grad student, so he's been there for all of the years of the murders. So it's 300% him that is the bad guy. It fits with the theme of the book where she's like, people who come across nice, maybe they aren't nice. He's only ever described as nice. It's him. I fucking know it. I'll let you know when I'm right. Hello. So things have developed since the last time I spoke to you. I finished Survive the Night a few days ago. 2 days ago? A day ago? Time moves weird when you're not in school. But I finished it the other day and I ended up giving it 3 stars. While I really enjoyed it, like it was really fast paced, I was really engaged with it, there are parts of it that I just didn't really connect with me. One thing is that a really big part, hello? Do you need attention? A really big part of the book is movie references, specifically old movie references, and I'm a person who kind of doesn't care about movies. Like, I'll enjoy the occasional movie, but I'm not a movie connoisseur, especially not an old movie connoisseur, so a lot of times I either have never heard of the movie or the actors being referenced, or like if I've heard of them, I don't know what the plot is, what the reference is supposed to mean, like what this is supposed to be doing for the story and the themes. So that just didn't really connect with me, and that was more so like, that's on my part. That's not really a book's fault, but it's part of why I didn't enjoy it, I think, to the degree I could have. And generally, I just think, compared to the plot of The Only One Left, I guess like I just didn't connect as much with it. There's not much really to say there. It felt like it was just a little bit worse construction-wise than The Only One Left, which makes sense because I'm pretty sure it came out a few years before The Only One Left, so I think Riley Sagar's, perfecting his craft, one could say. But yeah, I just in some ways didn't like some of the ways he took the story. Something I have noticed, beyond the fact that Riley Sagar loves depressed women with a lot of self-hatred and guilt, once the twists start twisting in his books, they don't stop. Like in the last 150 pages, when things start, twisting and turning, they truly don't stop until like the last page, which is something I enjoyed. It really makes you keep reading it. Honestly, once you get to the point where all the things are being revealed, you can't put it down because every other page, things are being put together, twists are twisting. So that's something I did enjoy, but again, like, did I like everything that we did in the book? Not necessarily. I'm not sure if I'm articulating this well. I also want to note that I was correct in my prediction for the major plot twist in Survive the Night. Do I think it is a flaw of the book that I was able to guess it? No, I think it's just more so it got to the point where you kind of recognize the conventions of the genre. Like, if you have a mystery, every time it's going to be someone you've been introduced to. Because if it's not someone that you've been introduced to and has been around the whole book or movie or whatever, it's not satisfying when you reveal that that person was like the big bad. So just based on the conventions of the genre, I was able to deduce who had to be like the big bad of the book. Do I think that was bad? Not necessarily. I did kind of get let down by the scene in which it was actually revealed. It felt a little bit anticlimactic. So like, I don't know, I was happy I was right, but I was also like, okay. It never really felt like the main character was in danger in the last part of it. I guess because I recognize she has to live, but like, I don't know, I felt like there could have been a little more stakes, a little more feeling, a little more shock and awe, and there just kind of wasn't. But all in all, like, I still enjoyed it, but I was just a little bit like, about the true ending, and like, the last few shocking and like action-packed scenes. There's nothing I could say is wrong with the book. I just didn't really connect with it and it just was fine. So that's that on that. I have started a new book. I was on a bit of a thriller kick, obviously, but I find that I can read 1 to 2 thrillers and then my anxiety starts picking up. So I need like a bit of a palate cleanser. So I went to the bookstore and ended up picking up The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I am on my library kick. However, my holds weren't coming in and I needed something to read, and so I was like, fuck it, I'll just go buy a book. And so I bought this one. I thought it was going to be a used copy, so I thought it'd be cheaper, but the bookstore I went to has both used and new books, and this one happened to be new, and I didn't realize until I was checking out, and I felt too awkward to try and find a used copy. So I got a new one. It was expensive, and I'm going to read it and I'm going to like it, hopefully. And most people know about The Poppy War. It's a fantasy book. It's rooted a lot in what it says on the back here. It's pulling from East Asian history, including the Second Sino-Japanese War. So it's very clear that there's a lot of like references and a lot of stuff is being pulled from real life history, some of which I'm semi-familiar with. It's really interesting seeing how like I can tell where things are being weaved in that I can recognize are probably real world things, so it's interesting reading. I don't really like reading synopsises of books, so my synopsis I'm gonna give you is based on what I've heard and what I've read, so it's gonna be questionable at this point, but I digress. It follows this girl named Rin, and she ends up acing this aptitude test essentially that decides whether or not you're gonna get into like these military academies across the country. And since she aces it, she ends up getting into like the most prestigious or like the top academy. And it follows her going there and getting training, and there's a magic system in here that we have not explored at all yet, but I know that it exists. And honestly, I have nothing else to tell you because I don't know anything about the plot of this book. But for now, that's what I can tell you. It's teenage girl in a military academy. I've heard this book is really depressing and also really brutal. So we'll see how that plays out for me. But I just need a bit of a palate cleanser because right now I'm reading Onyx Storm, but I'm taking a break from it because I'm buddy reading it and I can't move forward until my friend catches up. So that's like fantasy romance, and I've been reading thrillers, so I wanted something that was a palate cleanser. So this is like fantasy. I don't think it has a heavy romance or any romance, I'm not sure, which I'm excited about. I need something different. This is different and I'm enjoying it. I've considered reading this book many times in my life, but I've been really intimidated by R.F. Kuang. I feel like I've just gotten in my head that the writing style was going to be really inaccessible, and that's actually, thankfully, not true. It's a lot more readable and accessible than I had initially anticipated, so it's not difficult to comprehend at all, and I've been having a good time with it. We have had a lot of exposition in the first 100 pages. Not that I'm mad at it, but like we're getting a lot of history, a lot of expositing about the world. It's interesting. It is notable though, because we'll have like pages that are just paragraphs on paragraphs of history. So I think it's important. I think we need the foundation, but it is very obviously being just like dropped in our lap so that we have the context for, I assume, things that come later. I'm pleasantly surprised so far. My reading kick I've been on, where I've been reading like much more than I usually do in a day, has continued with this book, even though it's a different genre. I thought maybe it was only going to be for like thrillers and mysteries, but I read like 100 pages in a day, and that's atypical for me. So maybe this is the start of a new era for me where I can read a more significant amount in a day and read more books and feel better about myself, because I've been really down on myself for reading really slow lately, because I feel like sometimes I'll be reading and I'll be reading for like an hour and make like 15 pages of progress, and I'm just like, what's happening? Like, why does my brain not work? So it's been nice feeling like I'm reading properly. I think it has to do with my ADHD, where it's really hard for me to focus and it's really hard for me to move on if I feel like I haven't fully comprehended every word on a page. So I've been trying to like train myself to let my brain use context clues when reading. So instead of like reading a sentence 10 times over to be like, okay, I've got that down packed, reading it and then like by the end of the page being like, did I synthesize what the point is and what's happening? And when you trust your brain, apparently it can do its job, because I have been able to fully understand what's going on without rereading things 7,000 times. So I'm happy with myself. I'm happy with my reading, and I'll let you know when I read more of this. Hopefully I get more connected to the character soon, just because like There's not a lot of characters in this book that like we're sympathetic to or we're close with, and the main character, like, while I don't dislike her, I just don't feel anything about her, which is unsurprising. Like, I'm not that far through, but it is something I've noticed. Like, I kind of don't care about her at this point. One of my holds from the library did come in today, so I went and picked it up when I returned Survive the Night, and that was Final Girls by Riley Sagar. I do want to read this probably after the Poppy War though, because again, I do want the break from thrillers, but this one did come in and I picked it up, so we'll see when I get to this, because I do really like Riley Sagar's writing. It's really fast-paced, and I've liked the stories, but my anxiety is a little bit too high to pick up another book where murder is a big deal. I don't actually know the synopsis of this book either, but like from the title I can guess that it's, you know, probably something slashery, murdery, something like that, because that's where like the final girl trope comes from, and I just don't think my mental health is there right now. So for now, we're not gonna pick this up. We're gonna read the Poppy War, and then maybe come back to this next, or maybe read something else and then come back to this. I just need a little bit of a palate cleanser. So yeah, this is a horrific angle, but just bear with it. I've been reading more of the Poppy War. I am 182 pages into this, and while I'm still like enjoying it, I wouldn't say I'm enjoying it a huge amount. Like, I feel like I'm just like passively enjoying it. I'm not like passionate about anything going on. I still feel really like meh about Rin, the main character, while I'm starting to understand her mentality more, and I do appreciate the fact that she's not one of those main characters, or like female main characters specifically, that are very humble and have very like humble and commendable motivations. Like, she's very outwardly motivated for power and yearns deeply for it. Like, her inner dialogue is very like power hungry, and I do respect that and I appreciate that, because it's very different than like your typical female main character, which usually has very noble pursuits and like motivations in mind. While I appreciate her motivations, do I care for her much as a character? Am I really rooting for her? I'm not rooting against her. I'm just kind of following her along, if that makes sense. I think part of that's because this book is passing a lot of time very quickly. I didn't realize it until like 10 pages ago, but we, like, in the span of nearly 200 pages, we have passed a whole year of time. Like, she has just finished her first year at this military academy. While it doesn't feel like anything has been rushed, like, it doesn't feel rushed by any means, I do feel like spanning a long period of time quickly has just made me a little disconnected. Like, I don't know, I feel like I'm not watching someone's growth over time. I'm just following them back. I'm back. My dog was freaking out. But I don't remember exactly what I was saying, but essentially, because we are spanning like such a long period of time in a short amount of pages, I think it's getting me a little disconnected from like the growth of the character. Because while I have witnessed her from point A to point B, I feel like I haven't seen enough of what occurred between point A and point B to really understand why she is the way she is. Like, I know why. I understand why. But I didn't get to, like, experience it as much, and so I think I'm less connected from her because of it, is my hypothesis there. But again, I'm still enjoying it. I just feel kind of like, meh. I guess a good way to put it is, like, I'm liking it. I'm not loving it. I'm also just a little bit intimidated by the world building. Not that I'm having trouble understanding it. I'm having a little bit of trouble remembering all of it. So it's a little bit hard there. Like, it's not too difficult, but it's just dense. There's just a lot of world and world building and history to learn. And so I'm trying to keep up with it, and I think I am, for the most part, keeping up with it. But then every once in a while, it'll mention something that I assume it's referenced before, and I just kind of stare blankly at it because I have no idea. But I'm hoping to make it to part 2. If you can see, like, there's a dark line there. That's the part 2 page marker. I'm hoping to make it to that point tonight, which is like 30 more pages. So wish me luck. The chapters are very, very long. Like, at the lowest, they're 20-something pages. At the highest, I think there've been like 30-page chapters. So that is a little difficult for my attention span. I do tend to prefer more of the shorter chaptered books, but c'est la vie. We're also only just, I think, teetering on the edge of mentioning magic, because I do know there's a magic system in these books. I have heard about it. We are just now potentially bringing it up. So that's something to note. It has not been relevant up until this point. The only thing that we've really talked about up until this point is martial arts, and I cannot picture in my mind's eye what they're doing. It's not, I don't think it's being described poorly per se, but like they're not really describing what the hell they're doing. So I just kind of have to make up in my brain what they're doing when they talk about doing martial arts based on what I know about martial arts, which isn't a ton, but yeah, let's go. Hey, y'all might not like me anymore after what I have to say, but I finished The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, and I feel really weird about it. When I finished it, I really didn't know how to rate it. I originally thought I'd give it a 3, but I have in fact reduced my rating down to a 2 because I think I was holding back on rating it lower because how much I know people love this book and this series and like how much praise it gets, and I don't think that's unwarranted. I think that's, you know, to each their own. So I think that's why I had put it at a 3, but I really think for me this is like a 2-star book, and I'll try to explain that here. Don't crucify me. Did I enjoy this book? Yes, I liked reading it. I found it interesting to read. In a very passive sense though, like I had mentioned, I didn't feel very connected to the characters in this book, and this is an issue that really persisted to the end. It got slightly better at the end, but like not enough that I think helped the book for me. I feel as though the characters' motivations and their growth was very much told to me rather than shown to me, and so when things would happen, I feel like I was constantly being told why the character is reacting that way instead of watching the character react and understanding why they're reacting that way because of what I've learned about them, if that makes sense. A really glaring example of this that really made me realize that this was what was going on was toward the end of the book, like 50 pages to the end, when the main character is, like, her internal dialogue is talking about this person she kind of views as a mentor. And she says she had mirrored herself against him, molded herself after him, one spirally after another. She had emulated his cruelty, his hatred, and his vulnerability. She knew him, finally knew all of him, and that was how she found him. None of that is demonstrated in this book, and if any of it is touched on, it's not touched on to the degree that it is trying to claim here. And instead, what I've had is a few interactions between them where I could see that sort of energy kind of coming about, but more interactions where or not even interactions, more instances where Rin in her own internal monologue is telling me how much she like looks up to this man, but I don't actually see it in her behavior, and I don't see that development occurring. And I also think it's trying to convince me of like her emulating this cruelty and this hatred. It hasn't been there. Like, occasionally she talks about hatred, but she has not been outwardly cruel up until this point. She does things after this, but up until this point where she's telling me how she's emulated his cruelty, she has not done anything outwardly cruel to anyone. The only people she's killed have been people in the line of fire who are enemies. She hasn't killed anyone gruesomely. She has not done anything outwardly cruel to anyone, and so I'm not convinced, and it annoys me because when I read these lines, I'm trying to think back, I'm like, what is she talking about? And it feels as though it's like stolen valor, where now you're trying to tell me that all these things have happened, and so you're trying to rewrite the narrative, and so I just believe that this development was shown, and it wasn't. And like, I just find that that's just how the main character was. I kept getting told how she was gaining so much anger, and she was becoming so cruel, and her perspective was changing, and she kept telling me it, and I didn't watch it happen. I could see certain events where like I can connect the dots and see this is why she would be more angry, this is why she would be dehumanizing these people, but you really don't witness it enough. It's not handled very well in terms of really organically watching this person develop these feelings. She really is telling me often after the fact that she has like changed, but I don't see her change, if that makes sense. That was a really big struggle for me in connecting with the character, and in some ways caring about what was going on. Like, I care about the conflict. I'm interested in this book in a very detached way, where I'm interested in the conflict, I want to see what happens, but not on the character level. And usually with this kind of like big action fantasy plots, I'm invested in the overall conflict. I want to know what happens, but I also am invested in the character's personal journeys. I feel like I'm just being told a lot about this character, about her motivations, about her experiences, and about how things have changed her, but instead of telling me, I'd rather you just show me. So that was definitely a big negative for me in this reading experience. Something I do like about this book is the themes it's taking on. I do like the themes, like the war themes of, and they're very pertinent at this time in our history too, which is interesting, but like themes about dehumanizing your enemies during war times, and like how oppressors think about their enemies, And then on the flip side, also considering that certain people who might be victims of another group of people can also be victimizing other people, if that makes sense. I think that was nuanced. I think that's interesting, and I do suspect that there's more of that we will explore in later books. But that was something I really enjoyed. I do like the themes of the book. I'm really interested in the war of it all. And like I said, reading this for the historical stuff and for like the actual just like plot is interesting. I really enjoyed it. I was invested in like the strategy and the war effort and all of that. With that being said, I do have what I think is a controversial opinion about this, beyond just generally not liking the characters and stuff like that. I find that the concept of this rubs me a little bit of the wrong way. Like I mentioned when I first talked about this is well, it's described as pulling from East Asian history and the second Sino-Japanese War. This doesn't pull from or gain inspiration from those historical events. This just is those historical events in a lot of ways and in a lot of instances, and it rubs me the wrong way because it basically just is a lot of these historical events with fantastical fictional names put on them and magic included. And something about that just is rubbing me a weird way. Like essentially that war, the second Sino-Japanese war between the Chinese and the Japanese, like that's just playing out in this book. Japan is called Mugen, China is called Nakan, and then you have other countries like Hesperia is just America. And it's very obvious because it's just pulling directly events that happened in our history and it's changing the names. And so you can recognize it really easily, which is interesting. And it's interesting to read because you're just essentially reading history with fictional characters and fictional names. However, it kind of rubs me the wrong way because it's just essentially is those historical events, and then you introduce your female main character, your like YA female main character. Well, this is not technically YA, but like she's a young adult herself. And you're introducing magic, and it just kind of gives fan fiction. Like it seems like you're kind of fanficking this historical event and then being like, here's my OC who can also do magic. Despite being interesting, it's rubbing me the wrong way just conceptually. Do I think it's being handled poorly? Not necessarily. I think R.F. Kuang is very knowledgeable, and I've heard that she's very knowledgeable. I know she's very educated, like just reading the blurb. Like she's an educated woman. I know that like she's not like defiling this history. It's just like conceptually you're taking a gruesome historical event, putting fictional names on the countries, even though we all still like it's very obvious who they are, introducing your female main character, original character, and introducing magic, and it's kind of odd. Like it kind of gives fanfic to me in a weird way. It's just something that makes me conflicted on how to think about this because it just comes across kind of odd to me. That's my controversial take on that. I've never really seen someone talk about it like that. I saw one review where someone kind of mentioned it bothering them, and I was like, okay, so somebody else has thought this before. Other things about this book that I hear a lot are like how brutal it is, and like, yeah, there are gruesome things that occur in this book, and they're really, really gruesome, in-depth descriptions of horrific things like sexual assault and like graphic murder and murder of children and murder of animals, whatever. Mostly because those things happened in real life. Like, for example, again, drawing on the fact that these places in here are just renames of real places. There literally is the occurrence of the rape of Nanking or the Nanjing massacre in this book, which was a terrible historical event, like awful. And that just like straight up one-to-one happens in this book essentially. And it's really gruesome how it's described. And so like those claims about this book, very much true. Because like I mentioned, I've been kind of reading this from a historical perspective more than like a fictional story perspective, because one, I recognize that this is basically one-for-one real history, and two, I'm not connected with the characters. I don't feel as devastated reading those brutal things. It feels more detached because I feel like I'm just reading historical text. So like, yes, it's hard to read, but also like I'm reading it kind of in more my academic brain. I feel like sometimes when I'm reading this from the perspective I read my like university readings from, which is interesting for me. It's like a very different vibe than usually when I'm reading fiction. But I do think there is some value to something like this, because a lot of times when I'm reading fictional books, you like will read gruesome war stuff, and like, you know, it can be like shitty to read and you're like, oh, that's terrible, but then like it kind of bounces off you because you're like, oh, this is fiction, these are fake people. With this, even though it is fiction, it doesn't bounce off you like that, because you can realize, oh, like these are fake people, but like real people went through that. And I think it is a valuable read in that way, because I think it changes your perspective and we can apply that to current conflicts happening today, because I think we kind of become a little desensitized to violence that's not happening on our soil. So I think in that way it was valuable just to kind of like get my brain thinking about modern day things and current day events where people are going through similar or some of the same things that people go through in this book and people went through in the past. So it kind of gets my brain thinking more about the impacts of war and people who are suffering right now due to that. So I don't know. I'm conflicted. This book conflicted me. I'm feeling a lot of things. Will I continue? Probably. I am curious to see where this goes moving forward in the series. I do hope we get a little bit more character work. I do know this was Arf Kuang's debut, so maybe some of those issues that I saw in this will be resolved in further books, just because like she would have had more experience then. But overall, I feel weird about this. With that, I'm going to be ending this reading vlog. I've been having a really productive reading month, like I've mentioned. It's like a little crazy. I feel like some voracious reader has taken over my body, and I've been making way more progress on books than I ever have before, which has been exciting. I've been enjoying that. And yeah, I'm not sure what my next read is going to be. I'm going back to reading Onyx Storm now, because my friend who I'm buddy reading with, hi Ava, if you're watching this, hello. She has returned from her trip and she's caught up, so I can now keep reading Onyx Storm. So that's what I'm reading currently. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.